So now we're going to move into our program here. We're going to start off the morning with a fireside chat. And I'd like to bring Miriam up here so that Miriam, by now, if you don't know who Miriam is, right? She's like, doesn't have a last name. She's a rock star, a long-standing high-techer. I told her how she has mentored me and helped me in my career. So, Miriam, everybody give her a round of applause.
You're too sweet.
Helped me a lot.
And joining me, what will be a very interesting conversation, is Lorraine Bardeen from Microsoft. I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone.
But believe it or not, you're not going to believe this, but we just met.
We did just meet.
But I think we're going to be
kindred spirits.
Kindred spirits. Yeah. So let's take a seat and get started. And by the way, I just want to say again, I think people say really nice things about you when you've been around a long time. That's all I'm saying, but I appreciate it. All right, so you want to do your check-in?
Sure. My name is Lorraine Bardeen. I'm Chief Technology Officer for Microsoft's Commercial Solutions, so the commercial side of the big tech company. I've been at Microsoft for 21 years, mostly on the engineering side. My mother is from Colombia. She immigrated to the United States as a child, was sent back again for being naughty, came back, and then raised me. I think that's all the check-in.
That's
Did
good.
I get it all?
Yeah,
okay.
You hit it.
I practiced last night. Thank you to everyone who helped me practice the check-in.
So now that you did your check-in and we sort of have the high notes, can you talk a little bit about your journey, and particularly as you decided what you were going to do and then the beginnings of your career?
Yeah, and a few other, I'll get all my cards on the table real quick.
Yes.
So my partner and I, who's a woman, have a blended family with kids ranging from 4 to 20 on Monday. So there's a lot going on in our household. We also have 4 pets. All of them have special needs. So there's just a lot going on.
Yes.
I sort of accidentally started in tech. Actually, I was a math major. I went into finance in Manhattan. And I was moving to Seattle for other reasons. And I thought, I'll just talk to Microsoft. And this was in 2002. And I just completely fell in love with, I think, the creativity, the spirit, what we would now call the growth mindset, which, it wasn't everywhere, but still that drive for creativity. So that's why I'm in tech. In terms of my identity, it really took me a long time, and I think we talked about this a little bit, because I look exactly like my father, and his heritage is, I guess, English. I really had to be deliberate and make a choice about how I was going to present myself, and I felt like claiming my Hispanic heritage was taking the space from someone else. And I actually went so far as to turn down things that I was rewarded because I felt uncomfortable, I felt inauthentic, and I sort of felt like I had to pick which identity am I going to present with to some degree. Mm-hmm. Has anyone ever felt like it can be a lot for other people to choose? They sort of like, oh gosh, you're that too. People get exhausted, and so in some ways I'm visibly a woman. So okay, that's already enough in tech sometimes for people to deal with. And then I talk about my family, and I'm LGBTQ. So people are like, okay, two's plenty. Anyway, I'll stop there, but it's a little bit more color, I guess, on my identity and my start in tech, at least.
Yeah, and I wanted you to share that because when you and I were talking, I thought about the fact that people, and I think I might have mentioned to you, people often say to me, nah, you're not Mexican. And I'm like, oh, yes, I am. No, you're not Mexican. You don't look like a Mexican. I'm like, really? How many Mexicans have you seen? Have you ever been to Mexico? Do you know that we're very varied, just like in the United States? So I relate to that. It used to really piss me off because I say, how dare you? Yo soy tapatía, soy mexicana. But, you know, you kind of get to a place where you pick your battles. And I decided to show who I am and where I come from through my actions and through my words and through the way I present myself at work, which, you know, we talked about this too. You bring a lot of who you are personally into leadership style. And we'll save that later because we're going to talk about your leadership style. So recently, just carrying on with that theme, if any of you have not seen this study by Coqual, which was a study that was sponsored primarily by Bristol Myers Squibb, but also by like 20 other companies, Amazon, KPMG, Google, J&J, a whole bunch of our partners. But it's called More Than a Monolith, the Advancement in Hispanic Latino Talent. And it was reported on by CNN, so it got a bit of press a couple months ago. But there's two stats I wanted to share with you and ask Lorraine about. One of them is 40% of those surveyed in corporate America said that they felt it was very necessary, 40%, very necessary to change something about themselves to be accepted in the workplace. And 68% who actually have a sponsor said their sponsors encouraged them to change something about themselves to be able to assimilate. So in other words, change part of who we are, our Latinidad, our individuality. What's your reaction to that?
I mean, it sounds spot on, and it sounds like it needs to change. I think for me, it started before birth. My mother made a lot of deliberate decisions. She really, the era and the location she was in was more about assimilation than about identity or sort of preserving your roots. And so she chose to raise us in an English-speaking household. She even chose the last name that, you know, like Jean was saying, she chose the last name that was more familiar and comfortable for her environment, which is, her last name is Gilbert, that's my middle name. My father's last name is Bardeen, so you can't read Hispanic heritage anywhere there. And then it's certainly something that I identify with multiple parts of my identity. Anything that's not visible, you choose. And I've had many people encourage me to be less colorful. I don't know if anyone's ever heard that. I had my last two managers ago, and I've been in an executive role at Microsoft for a while, and I continue to get coached to have more gravitas, be more serious. And you know, I think that's, it's pervasive, it's stuck. I think there's a stuck type of coaching around prove that you can act this way, and then we will sort of reward you. And for me, I really identify with what a lot of folks said yesterday around bringing your entire self. It's going to unleash so much energy. You know, some of the masking that we do of our various identities is like having to put on a whole new set of clothes and before you enter every room. It takes a lot of energy to do that. And the amount of energy you have back to your career, your profession, your family life, by not removing those parts of yourself, it's tremendous.
Yeah. Yesterday, we had a panel that was great. I wish you could have heard it. It was about storytellers. Marcelo, who you met last night, was one of those. And it was emceed by one of our board members, Yamila, who is a fabulous storyteller herself. But one of the topics that came up was, have you ever felt like an imposter? I think Marcelo asked that question. Have you?
Yes and no. So I say that I've never suffered from imposter syndrome, and the reason I say that is because I believe we're all so messy, and none of us really exactly know what we're doing at any point. And the way that I've coached myself out of imposter syndrome is I've had this sort of physical thing in my head. Look to the left of me, look to the right of me. Is anyone else stepping up for this? No? Okay, then I'll just get on with it, see how it goes, do the best I can. And that has helped me in all those moments when I entered a space where people said, why are you here? The place I feel most recently like an imposter, honestly, I went to the Hispanic and Latin X meeting at Microsoft for executives, and everyone in the room was like, why are you here? Literally, 8 people said, why are you here?
Oh.
And I, you know, so then but that was, I mean, for me, it's on me too. I had not chosen to just really embrace and tell my story. It's a huge part of my home life, a huge part of my family life. My mother's not a citizen. There's a lot of complexity with elder care for people who maybe lost their appropriate documentation, but yeah, I spent a lot of time with Homeland Security. I spent a lot of time trying to navigate the healthcare system. Not that that's part of everyone's experience, but so I felt like an imposter from an identity standpoint when related to my not visible identities. And then from a professional standpoint, I would just say my big trick, everyone who works with me knows this trick, my big trick for imposter syndrome, it works perfectly every time. It's from a very cheesy American movie about buying a zoo to heal from heartbreak. And the trick is, the biggest moments in life take 20 seconds of courage. 20 seconds of courage. And I have found that to be true over and over. When I first was promoted to partner at Microsoft and I opened the door to the room and it looked to me like all the men were sitting in front and all the women were sitting in the back, and it was a deep tech group. And I thought, this moment, I choose what table I put myself at. I don't want to, I want someone else to tell me, but so I told myself 20 seconds to get to a seat. I can do it for 20 seconds. And then once I was there, so I gave you my trick to counter imposter syndrome.
We're going to hear more tricks and tips from her. Trust me, when we get to the technical, hardcore stuff. But I want to stay on this theme a little bit more because I really appreciate how you're sharing yourself. In my career, I've been coached to not be so open, to not leave myself so vulnerable. But I have found that if I bring that to my leadership, that I have people who would walk through glass with me, you know, versus being someone who is removed and indifferent. And I think that's something maybe from our shared culture that we have because of the way our parents raised us. My mother told everybody everything. Sometimes I was like, oh, Mom, please. Please do not tell him how I didn't come home after, you know, please stop talking about it. Yeah, anyway. I had an interesting conversation last night at dinner, which is when you came to say hello to me and I totally blew you off.
It's called ghost.
So sorry.
I was like, hi, Miriam, and she's like.
Well, I was in this deep conversation with a gentleman who will go nameless, but it was his first interaction with high tech. And he was a very senior Hispanic tech leader at a local company. And he was asking me a little bit about high tech, and then he threw this question at me, which was, hey, I'm Hispanic, I'm in a C-level job, you're Hispanic, you ran global consulting for KPMG, why don't we have more Hispanics in the C-suite? I said, well, what do you mean? Why don't you? Like, it seems like an obvious answer. He goes, well, if we made it, why can't everybody make it? And I have to tell you, for a moment, it threw me for a loop because I was like, whoa, well, what do you mean? But as we got into the conversation, I realized that he was opening up a real dialogue around how do we better represent and how do we better advocate to push up and pull up, which we talked about yesterday. And do you think that there's more that we can do as executives, those of us who have been blessed and had the opportunity? I always tell people, listen, I could have been a statistic if I wouldn't have had some of the opportunities that I had. So do we have a responsibility to that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's exactly why I made just a beeline for high tech, and thank you for allowing me to come, in fact.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you. I'm so happy you're here because I think we're going to be friends.
I think so too. And I mean, as long as you acknowledge, as long as you say hi to me next time. I mean, it's a part of friendship that I relish. Like,
and you know, I'm really a friendly person. I was like so happy that I had stopped drinking alcohol and that I was lucid enough to have this deep dialogue that I was oblivious to everything else going on. Rosa was sitting at my table. I never spoke to her. I was like
So yeah, I absolutely do. I 100% believe I have a responsibility personally, and we each do. I agree with you that the standard advice that we've heard here is critical. The pull and push people up, identify people, give people a chance. Those moments, and then something like today. Okay, you've probably scanned dozens of people's badges. To me, the big differentiator between scanning a dozen of people's badges and having a better number on LinkedIn versus building a powerful network that's going to catapult your career, their career, and others is what you do next. Is it a number on LinkedIn, or are you sending messages and connecting with them and then protecting time on your calendar? My secret for conferences is I then set up recurring slots in my calendar, and I meet with the people who I met at the conference. That does not sound very complicated, does it? But a lot of times we protect the time for this, and then we just fall back into the deep end of day job, day life, everything. So in addition to those sort of very important standard pieces of advice you've heard, there's also the part about taking a chance on yourself. And I think helping to provide space, in addition to providing the important space for mental health awareness that you did this morning, provide space for how do you take those chances on yourself. Those little moments of courage make a huge difference, because that's what attracts sponsors, right?
Yes.
I guarantee in your career, there were moments where you showed courage, like even in small ways that attracted the attention of sponsors, who then took a chance on you because they had seen something that they could bet on. So I think helping folks early in career learn how to display that courage and make those bets on themselves can make a huge difference too, which you're doing with the students here, one of whom I met this morning.
20 seconds of courage, I love that. Okay, we're gonna come back to Lorraine as a leader and her style, but first I wanted to dig a little bit into your role and what that is showing you. We had very interesting panels yesterday on cybersecurity, on AI, and I was wondering, when you go see these big clients of yours, because I know Microsoft has huge clients, what's the #1 topic they want to talk to you about? Doesn't everybody want to know, like, when you go meet them, are they asking you about Microsoft products? Are they asking you about AI? What are they talking to you about?
Yeah, this year is different than other years. So one of the parts of my job is I need to be able to speak authentically with a deep knowledge base on pretty much anything that Microsoft does, which is a lot of things. This is not an ad for Microsoft, so that's the end of that part. But I will say, I might show up to a session. Often people come to our headquarters and do these executive briefings, and so it'll be the CEO of a huge global company, their CTO, CIO, chief data officer, security officer, et cetera. And the session might be called AI transformation, or cybersecurity fundamentals, or data transformation, whatever. That's what the session's called. Here's what happens. I show up, I say hello, et cetera. Everyone introduces themselves. Literally, the door clicks close. So the door clicks close. The executives are in the room. You know what they want to talk about? What they actually want to spend their entire hour on is not my slides with really pretty pictures of like the cloud and all those things. They want to talk about culture. They want to talk about skilling. They want to talk about change. They want to talk about how can they be leaders who are going to help their people and serve their customers through what feels like a huge change in what technology will mean for their company, their industry. That's what we spend the whole hour on. And sometimes, like last night, or not last night, 2 nights ago, I was with a telco, and the CIO said, you know what I really want help with? Can we schedule follow-up? Like, how do you get different departmental heads in the company to talk about something that is going to be part of software that they've never had to talk through before? I mean, these are not technology topics. These are change management, they're cultural change, there's employee support. This is what the execs are asking for time with. But when I say behind closed doors, it's because, of course, they're in town, or I'm in town with them to talk about technology. And there will be plenty of that. Obviously, we're going to put together, we're going to talk about enterprise architecture. We're going to really help think through what's going to serve them best. But that stuff is easy, right? The part where leaders really need to spend their time and attention is the brand that they represent to customers, the care and growth they offer to their employees. That's where they want to spend their time.
Well, it's interesting because we've been talking about the board, the high-tech board, and we shared this with the room yesterday. We've been talking a lot about our priorities because we're sort of growing. There's increasing demand, and people want to be here, which is great. And where do we focus our time, our staff, our talents, our money? And one of the things that's very clear to us is we're not here to teach people how to be better technologists. Like, there's plenty of people who do that. But what we do provide, and it's in our mission statement, is really very important culturally attuned leadership skills. How do you go from being a technician, a technical person, to being a leader? And a leader at in different situations, at different levels. And that part, I think, always goes back to people, goes back to humanity, right? So I know, because I looked at your material, that you have some really cool stuff about very pithy stuff. I love that word, pithy. There's a gentleman in the audience who I worked with for a long time who used to use it all the time, and I decided to appropriate it because I'm not a pithy person, so I decided to appropriate pithy. But your ideas that you put down on paper are very pithy, and one of them, speaking of AI and transformation, was around what do you need to do to be AI ready? Can you talk about that?
Sure, and I am not pithy either. I'm a talker.
But your slides are very pithy.
One of the things I'm known for, I think, more recently in this part of my career at Microsoft is getting all of us to the table with a set of core concepts that we all understand and can all move forward with. And that sounds so simple. It's basically what you might have learned at age 8 with lowest common denominator with math when reducing fractions. But being able to do that, being able to bring people to the table and figure out where can we all agree, and then let's build from there, it's really a tremendous leadership skill set. So anyway, see how not pithy? She didn't ask, tell me what you think about pithiness. Okay, so I'll share 2 concepts that resonate for every single company I work with in every single industry in dozens and dozens of countries around the world. First, where are they going to spend their time and energy with AI right now? And second, what do they need to be ready? So the first concept, it's really 4 things, and I coach them, pick one of the first 3 to start with, and you always have to do number 4. So the first 3, where companies are spending their time first. One is really revitalizing, uplifting, energizing the customer experience, their customers. There's no question, I'm sure you've heard a lot about it yesterday and more today. This is an opportunity to serve customers better, no question. 2 is enriching the employee experience. How can you help your own people in your own company take irritating stuff off their plate so they can do the work they love more? 3 is reshaping business processes that are clunky, boring, repetitive, redundant, And then the fourth, so you pick one of those to start with, and there's so much low-hanging fruit right now this period of time, just like there was in the early part of using mobile in work or using cloud, et cetera. The fourth is anyone calls, it's not a Microsoft term, but the fourth is bending the curve on innovation. And this one's all about creativity, it's about growth, it's about opening your mind as leaders to the broader maybe employee base and hearing what are things we haven't thought of yet that are really going to potentially create new departments for our business, new products, new ideas. Always do number 4. Number 1, 2, and 3, though, those are going to help you, pay for number 4. In other words, you're going to see immediate real-time benefit while you're building some of your newer ideas. So those are the areas. And then in terms of what they need to be ready, for sure, there's some infrastructure that's needed. There's no question about it. A year ago, I would have said, you need a large language model. And we were all sort of in a panic of figuring out how to license, construct, et cetera. Of course, large language models are a critical part of this wave of AI. But infrastructure overall, what we now understand is what's important is that companies need for infrastructure. They need access to whatever models they want. They might want to use small language models. They might want to use fine-tuned models. They might want to use language-specific models. So they just need access. The infrastructure they really need is great infrastructure for their developers, their people, their employees, their partners. They need great dev tooling, tool chains, and infrastructure to help use the models. And they need responsible and secure AI wraparound tools, right? That's what they need. And there are a lot of companies that provide that, by the way. That's what they need from an infrastructure standpoint, and they need access to enough capacity to actually use it that is regionally relevant. But all the other stuff they need is about their talent, their people. They need not just skilling. Skilling sounds very vague. People need the knowledge, of course. So skilling's about knowledge. I need to learn how to use these products in my day-to-day life, whether I'm a software developer or I'm a finance analyst or anything else, an executive at the company. But they also need a little bit of, they need in their heart to feel safe trying something new. And so really think through how can you make the team, the talent, feel safe trying something new. And give them space to do that. And what we find often is that it starts with champs in different departments, and then they have the opportunity to create those cells and spread out from there, and really enable that growth mindset, that change management that's going to, I think, open up some exciting stuff for people. And if we have time, I have a great example from our company in our customer support division.
So just let me ask something about what you said, and then we'll go to your example.
Yeah.
Fair? So last fall, KPMG did, and I am a retired KPMG partner, so I have to say something about KPMG at some point. But KPMG did a survey in conjunction with high tech around responsible AI, or as KPMG calls it, trusted AI. Mm-hmm. And KPMG's like your top partner of the year, I think I read. And 74%, let me just check. Yep, 74%. And so the survey people were high-tech executives and members. 74% of the people said the number one thing their companies are worried and focused on for AI was reliability and privacy. So that kind of goes in line with what you were saying, is that that's like a first step around the infrastructure.
Yeah, and to get into what you need to be AI ready, one thing that we're really understanding, I think, is going to be the whole next year's wave. Knowledge management is so cool again. Knowledge management, information management, knowledge bases, and this is something that C-suite are grappling with. And you could say it in a lot of different ways. Knowledge management is what stuff do we have where and who can access it? Oh, then there's also data governance. Are we confident in our data governance? No one says yes, by the way. Not a single CEO says yes. And so if they're starting to think, okay, if anyone in the company can type in, I'd like to know, and then get any result from any data repository, knowledge base, articles from 14 years ago that are on some cul-de-sac of information storage that no one's looked at for a long time. It's an opportunity for sure. And it's not an opportunity that people want to just ignore because that would be learning about a problem and then moving on from it without improving the company. But still, it's a little scary right now for executives as they think through that. So what I would recommend, start thinking about, if you haven't already, I heard some yeses, if you haven't already, start thinking about knowledge management, information management, how to really up-level and provide access to as many employees as possible to improving. There's a lot of creative grassroots ways to improve knowledge management, to improve data sources within the company, to improve data tagging. Do you want the AI assistant to be able to find your video? What should you do when you publish things? There's a lot there. It's going to be a really rich area of innovation over the next year.
When I hear knowledge management, I think of how many programs and projects over my career I funded or I did to deal with the knowledge management problem. I remember at least twice a year someone would come forward with a business case. We really need to do, and I need this. So we're back to it, huh?
It
really never got fixed, I don't think.
It never got fixed. What we have that's different is we have a completely different way to measure the outcomes now. So running, as engineers, we're used to running test cases for multiple different parts of software and solutions, et cetera. But now anyone in the company can run a test on the outcome, proving or disproving the outcome of your knowledge management. You can just, and so running searches using natural language is completely different than what we could do before, and it really, I think, helps us quickly pinpoint where do we have issues.
Yeah, great. So tell us your example.
Oh, so Microsoft operates in 120-ish countries, 90 languages, and has 40,000 customer support agents. 40,000 customer support agents.
Wow.
Yeah, and those are both Microsoft employees and partner employees who work full-time to support Microsoft's customers. And then think about the products. There's someone who might call in with a question about their Azure dev environment and some really complicated question about setting up the environment. And then the next person, okay, it's not all the same phone, but still, the next person will call in with a question on their Xbox game because they can't get past this one part they're stuck on, and that's what they need help with, right? So it's a really diverse set of products. So our customer, we thought, like any company right now, where can we help the most? Remember those 4 things? Helping our employees, improving customer satisfaction, and reshaping business processes. Guess what? Customer service, you can do all of those at once. So one of the agent teams actually sits in the same building as me, and so I've spent a lot of time with them. They're using, AI tools. I'm not going to use any product names. They're using stuff that is aligned with the strategy that we're taking as a company. But the first step that made a big difference to them is just getting on one messaging platform, whatever it is, one communication platform. For us, it's Teams. It could be anything.
You mean like Teams?
Oh, good example. Yeah.
I threatened her to not come up here and do a Microsoft pitch.
It's a great example. Okay. And then the second is having just one way to understand customers. So one sort of agent desktop. There were 50 different agent-facing tools just to understand the customer. We collapsed into one. But that was all nice. That's like any change management to support agents. The breakthrough, of course, is now they have a Copilot that they use with every single case. And the 2 biggest breakthroughs, and I'm going to say 2 positives and 1 major negative that we haven't got there yet. So one positive is as soon as they start helping the customer, they have everything the customer has shared before instead of just making that customer start from scratch, which is exhausting, right? So they just get all of the relevant information right away, and it's right there at their fingertips. And the agent showed me, they usually have like 85 different tabs open that are all their favorite ways to answer questions, and they just get that at their fingertips. The thing they love the most, though, is the recap of the conversation. So I never really thought about that. Like we've all learned a lot about doctors and how they have to do medical documentation and then recap the meeting. And we're now comfortable with the fact that that's not really fair. It's okay to have some transcription for doctors so they can keep good records. Well, agents have had to recap and retype every single thing that happened in the conversation, both to submit the case and then in like often an email or text summary back to the customer. So they're redoing the same thing over and over. That's gone. So in one immediate
That's awesome.
tech upgrade, they're able to just take that out of their day job, which they hate. So when you think about enriching employees' experience, removing stuff people hate doing is good. What's not working so well is we're not there yet on knowledge management. So we're a big company. We have a lot of sources of knowledge and information. And agents admitted, like, we're not there yet. I still keep my 40 of my 85 tabs open with my favorite solves for these, the most common problems that come up. And what they're doing, though, is they think of themselves as creating the Copilot. They think of themselves as coders on this new wave of tech. So every time a question comes up, they try it and give real-time feedback that improves the system. So even the areas that aren't working right now, if we think of ourselves as co-creators of whatever in your company isn't working that well with AI, I think we get to really change how it functions going forward.
That's amazing. I worked as a customer service rep at a phone company when I was going to school and when I was young. It wasn't my first job. Cleaning hotel rooms with my mom was my first job because I wanted good shoes. So when I was 14, I went to help her because there was no way she was going to buy me the shoes I wanted. So anyway, so that's fascinating about the technology. And I think customer service and the whole customer experience is so rich all the time, continually for improvement. So can we switch now to leadership? And I want to leave a few minutes for people to ask you questions. So you've talked a bit about yourself and who you are. What is it, what do you think in all of that where you've described yourself, what's the characteristic that makes you a better leader?
So I'm going to cheat first and then give a second answer. So
you've been doing that to all my questions. You realize that, right?
Well, I mean, as if you don't.
Okay.
Right. So, so the reason I'm cheating is because Microsoft doesn't have a rich history of really thoughtful culture paradigms and pillars for the whole decades and decades. It was more sort of fast-moving startup style early on. But the past 10 years has been transformative, and I just love the leadership principles, and I'm going to use them. There's only 3. One is your job as a leader is to create clarity. I mean, it really doesn't get much better than that,
That's
which
awesome.
is why
That's pithy.
It is very pithy, and it is so true. Do you know think of how many times you've encountered folks in your day job or leaders maybe who do not create clarity. In fact, they seem put on this earth to remove clarity, right? So that's 1. 2, generate energy. And that's something that's maybe a little bit harder. It should not be hard for us as people. We are energetic humans. Think about the way we live our lives, and maybe this could be an interesting topic for high tech sometime. American professional culture in many ways lacks that authentic energy and the warmth that is very normal for us as humans. So that's a second leadership principle, and it's one that I tend to really live in a lot.
I love that one. Yes.
And then the third one is just really showing up for results. And there's a lot of ways to phrase that, but you need to create clarity, generate energy, but you also have to finish the thought, actually deliver the outcomes that we've signed up to, and really focus on doing that well for people, which makes a big difference in their careers. So I would say out of those, where I feel the most at home is, well, all of them are great. It's awkward to say I'm terrible at any of them. But I think connecting people to ideas is a place I feel really at home in, which helps us deliver results. So I try to model how to generate energy authentically in a way that people can carry forward, and that's really helped. One more thing about leadership, though, that has made a big difference for me, that I was telling you earlier today. I spent a lot of time determined that I knew what was right. I don't mean ethically right. I mean knowledge, like this is the right strategy, this is the right product, this is the right architecture, this is the right, and 99% of those times I was wrong, and my determination only slowed me down. So all of the times, I think the biggest differentiator for me in my growth has been allowing someone to break through my certainty and really hearing what they're saying. And in general, those people were sponsors who cared about me in some way, professionally, et cetera. But I remember every one of those moments. I remember standing in a hallway and the person saying, we're gonna move this or shut this down or change this. And I was like, grr! I remember being so resistant, but looking back, those were all of the forks in the road. So there's something about leadership or leadership potential around allowing yourself to hear the counterpoint, the counter voice, the person who contradicts your certainty. This is not about ethics. Don't allow anyone to talk you off your gut about anything ethical or unethical, but about just knowledge and what specifically to do next. And that's made a big difference for me. Relaxing my certainty, seeking for what I don't know about something, and spending most of my energy there.
That's great. I've always talked about surrounding myself with people who are not afraid to tell me the truth. I have a pretty strong personality. It's pretty easy for me to also be in my certainty. And the times I feel like I've had the most successful teams is when I allow, or the team itself is stronger than me and has more knowledge than me and is actually better at many things than me. And I think in those moments in my career is when I've leaped ahead and the company has leaped, or my charge has leaped ahead. And most of the people that I've experienced with are in my life still, even though I no longer really work. So I get you. I get that. It's so important for those of us who grew up. My mother's favorite saying was always, her last word is always no, 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 because she would tell me something, I go, no, you're not right, you know. So breaking through certainty, that's another good one. 20 minutes of courage and breaking through your certainty. I love that. So before we open it up, talk to me a little bit about what you might have done different in your career.
I think it goes back to the examples I was just giving. I can think about just the energy that I put into fighting change at different stages in my career, and it's hard to recognize now. Every time I started with no, that's a bad idea, or we're wrong. So early on when someone said, hey, you should go talk to this guy, he's hiring a chief of staff role, and I was like, no, I don't want to be a chief of staff. You know, just go push paperwork around. That was the voice in my head. It was completely wrong. It was a transformative role for me. Or someone said, hey, we're going to move this team to another person's 15 years ago. No, 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 I made this. Just because it's successful, you're taking it away. And really, really like all those no first reactions, I can't remove them because they were part of the growth, but I didn't have to keep at it for so long in every case. You know, maybe I could have had like a no day and then come back the next day instead of like, you know, a no 6 weeks.
You asked me earlier if I sleep better at night now that I'm retired. And I said, yeah, because I don't hang on to all that stuff anymore. I really could care. But anyway, that's very helpful. Any questions before I go to our final few things up here? Does anyone have questions for Lorraine? Step right up and ask them. We have one here.
Hi.
Yes.
My name is Amanda Ortiz. I'm a software engineer at Dell. So this might kind of go into like a little bit of what you were saying about imposter syndrome, but it's a little different. So myself, as someone who's been recently actively unlearning the subconscious pressure to prioritize the comfort of white people by suppressing aspects of my identity, such as my cultural identity or cultural background, I'm curious about your approach to maintaining authenticity in the professional settings, especially as you mentioned, like when faced with the coaching or feedback to be more serious. How and what ways do you find ways to integrate your authentic self while still staying true to yourself, or do you choose to disregard it? Like, what is your mindset or self-talk to your...
It's a great question, because the insight you just shared in the question is that being truly authentically yourself and also being serious all the time, those are very difficult to do. So my answer is humor, which works for most cases. And I'm not saying I make fun of my identity, but using humor for a moment where the other person is restabilizing themselves in their view of the world, I enjoy it. Like, for example, Miriam, ask me what does my husband do?
What does your husband do?
Oh my God, do I look straight? That's, oh God. Oh, what have I done? You know, I mean, and then just, they're like recalculating and having a little panic, and they're like, is she gonna get mad? And then there's a moment of humor, and then I just like move forward and we just enjoy our conversation. So in some ways, don't be afraid to use humor. Like if someone is, you know, I don't know, like making some ridiculous Cinco de Mayo joke or something, and I don't mean a harmful, toxic one. Then of course we need to use workplace, you know, protocol to follow up on that. But it's just dumb or something. Come over the top with a better joke, right? I would say don't be afraid to use humor, but I think it is astonishing how people react to confidence. It is astonishing. If you can just tell yourself that 20 seconds of courage, if people see a confident person, they just want to be near them and know them. And it doesn't mean you feel that way for the first 20 seconds, but you'll be in your own skin after that 20 seconds talking to a person. So I know it sounds a little bit like fake it till you make it, or that sounds inauthentic. It sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but it's just a little bridge to get you there. Humor, first
Good.
20 seconds.
Thank you.
Let's go over here.
Thank you. Good morning, Miriam and Lorraine. Thank you for such an insightful and enjoyable and genuine conversation this morning. My question is around leadership. So from the leadership perspective, Lorraine, how do you drive a team to change what they always do and think the way that they always are used to thinking, into transforming into an innovative and creative team? What are some pointers that you can give us, please?
I think this is where modeling really comes in. You know, I think sometimes we make mistakes as leaders and we tell other people to change, but we do everything the same way, right? So by modeling, I mean showing people that I am also changing what I do, showing that vulnerability around, wow, this is sort of hard. I'm really used to functioning in a certain way. That's one thing. So it's a core part of how we lead people, right? We model the behavior that we expect them to follow. So that's one. Another thing I do in my team, and many folks in my team love this process, every 6 weeks we have a sort of alignment meeting. And the first part of that, we review OKRs. That's pretty standard. Fun for me, maybe not for everyone. The second part we call hot topics. And the rule about hot topics is you can only bring things you don't know how to solve. And everyone brings their brain to the problem across teams. There's something very powerful culturally about this, because no one's coming to show off how good their thing is. People are coming saying, the thing I'm accountable for, that I'm supposed to do, I don't really know how to solve this part of it. Who has ideas? And that sort of seeps into the organization. So my advice would be, think about both what you're modeling And then also think about where and how you create environments where people can practice showing they don't know exactly what to do it's not just safe, but it's like a high-performing environment, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. I have a flashing red light, but Lorraine, you're going to be around if people for a while,
Yep.
right? So if people want to ask you questions, I'll take one more question from over here.
Good morning. I'll keep this brief. My name is Edgardo Perez. I work for Palo Alto Networks. I am a talent and DEI leader there. And this question builds off the last two, actually. When you think about, we have a lot of leaders in the room who manage teams, and they manage through layers. And there's a lot of talk about psychological safety. And as you think about folks who are at that intersection of being Latinx or Latina and LGBTQIA+, what advice do you have for the leaders in the room around how to proactively create a psychologically safe space where you can tap into that energy and really inspire people?
For me, it was actually like the story I told about the sort of imposter feelings around, really showcasing and claiming my identity as a woman of both Hispanic heritage and real life right now. 10 years ago, that was my LGBTQ identity. It's not that I was ever not out. I was always completely out, but it's very different to like, I'm living my authentic self, but I never say it out loud, right? That's very different. So I never lied, but I also didn't put words that would, freeze people up in the front of my bio, right? And so 10 years ago, what changed for me, and I'm a late bloomer, is I was promoted to partner, and it was a big moment for me. Like, what am I modeling for everyone in the organization? Like, what am I modeling? Am I modeling, this is what success looks like, to just be careful? No, that is not what I want to model. So I immediately rushed off to be a speaker at Lesbians Who Tech, which is just very not subtle. It's extremely not subtle. Like, the level of discomfort people have with the word lesbian, it's very interesting. Anyway, so I rushed off to do that, and it was like inside, my discomfort was not, what many people have suffered with internalized homophobia at all. What inside it was, I feel bad for other people, they're gonna be uncomfortable. Like people are just uncomfortable by all sorts of things. So similarly, when I showed up at the Hispanic execs group at Microsoft, I'm like, everyone's gonna be uncomfortable, because they're gonna be like, why are you here? What's going on? Like, but here's my answer. Every single person in this room has some intersectionality, like everyone. And a lot of the psychological safe space, I know it's doing extra work, but it's extra work that I feel like is making an imprint on the world. If I do some of the extra work to create that psychologically safe space, you will be amazed how many white men who you clocked as zero section have a lot of stories to share. Like, you will be amazed. I'm not saying you're here, you're put on this earth to make a safe space for white men, but I think it's the modeling, the talking about myself, the sharing that space. You can't make it psychologically safe for everyone, but the bigger a platform you have, the more you have to talk out loud. And you can't stand on that platform without pushing and pulling people onto it with you. So as soon as I had a little platform that I could fit 2 feet on, that's when I started being a lot louder. And my hope, as with the students I talked to earlier, my hope is that no one feels like they need to wait until they have a little platform before they can show that constant authenticity and claiming their identity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm all for the day when we don't need a platform. I'm all for that day. So it's been great being up here. We could go on and on. I have like 10 more questions. I had a little game I wanted to play with you, but I've got to get on a plane to go to my niece's wedding, just in all honesty. And also, I think there's other people waiting to come up here.
Yep.
But 20 seconds of courage, break through your uncertainty, and use your little platform to create more space that's mentally healthy.
Yeah.
Love it. This isn't the end of our dialogue.
I don't think so either. And thank
All
you
right.
so much for the welcome, by the way. Like,
And we're
incredible.
happy to have you here. We're not lesbians who code, but we're everyone who codes. So we're happy to have you here. We hope to see you more engaged in high tech.
Great.
And how great was she? Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.